They say life's unpredictable. Well, mine decided to throw a brick at my face on the one day I thought I could finally breathe easy. My name's Marcus Jameson. I was 22 back then, living in Atlanta, scraping by but feeling like I had my shit together for once. A new job at a local auto shop, a group of loyal friends, and plans for a killer birthday night out. Sounds good, right? Hold on to that thought. So it's July, hotter than the devil's armpit. I'm walking through my neighborhood, which, let's be honest, has more potholes than streetlights and more cops than safety. But hey, it's home. I was on my way to my boy Tyler's place. He'd promised me ribs and beer, and the man never breaks a promise. As I'm walking, I cut through this alley because, let's face it, who's got time to take the long way in this heat? And that's when the night took a sharp left turn into hell. Out of nowhere, blue and red lights start flashing, and I hear the unmistakable bark of a cop yelling, "Stop right there!" I froze. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I've watched this movie before, and it never ends well for guys who look like me. The officer gets out of his car, a middle-aged white guy, tall, built like a linebacker, and carrying the kind of smugness that screams, "I own this town." Turns out his name was Officer Brett Carter, but I didn't know that yet. "Hands where I can see them," he yells. So I comply because, I like breathing. "Hey man, what's the deal? I'm just walking," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. But this guy wasn't interested in a conversation. He starts circling me like a vulture, eyes scanning me up and down like I've got "wanted to criminal" tattooed on my forehead. Then he hits me with, "What are you doing in this area?" Now I'm trying to stay calm, but the sarcasm slips out before I can stop it. "I live here. What are you doing in this area?" Big mistake. He steps closer, puffing out his chest like he's auditioning for a bad cop drama. "Don't get smart with me, boy." Boy. That word hit me like a slap. But I wasn't stupid enough to fire back. I just stood there, heart pounding, waiting for this nightmare to end. Spoiler, it didn't. The setup. While he's grilling me, another cop car pulls up, and now I've got two of them breathing down my neck. Meanwhile, Carter starts patting me down like he's auditioning for TSA. And just when I think it can't get worse, he suddenly steps back, holding a gun. Not his gun, but some beat-up old revolver he supposedly found in a trash can nearby. "What the fuck is this?" he says, waving it in my face like he just uncovered the crime of the century. I'm standing there, stunned. I've never seen that thing in my life. But Carter isn't hearing it. He's grinning now, like he just hit the jackpot. "You're under arrest for possession of a firearm and suspicion of armed robbery." At this point, my brain is doing cartwheels. Armed robbery? What armed robbery? And then it hits me, the radio chatter I overheard earlier about a holdup a few blocks away. This guy wasn't looking for justice. He was looking for a scapegoat. And lucky me, I fit the description. Black, male, breathing. The arrest. They slap the cuffs on me so tight I can barely feel my wrists, shove me into the back of the squad car, and haul me off to the station. I'm trying to explain, trying to plead, but it's like talking to a wall. Carter is in the front seat smirking at his partner and making little comments like, "Got ourselves another thug off the streets." By the time we get to the station, I'm boiling with anger. But fear is creeping in too. They throw me into an interrogation room. Cold, gray, and reeking of bad coffee. Carter walks in, leans against the table, and starts laying out the charges like he's reading off a menu. Armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, resisting arrest. The list keeps growing, and my stomach keeps sinking. "I didn't do any of this," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've got the wrong guy." But he just laughs. "Tell it to the judge, kid." The reality check. Hours later, my mom shows up at the station, tears streaming down her face, begging them to let me go. But Carter and his buddies are loving the show, treating her like she's invisible. Finally, they let her see me, and the look on her face when she sees me in cuffs? It broke something in me. "Marcus, baby, we're gonna fix this," she says, her voice trembling. "We'll get you a lawyer, and we'll get you out of here." But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a fight we could win easily. The system was rigged, and I was just another piece on their board. You ever sit in a room so quiet it feels loud? That's how the courtroom was on the day they put my life in a blender. It smelled like cheap carpet cleaner and stale coffee, and the judge looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My mom sat behind me, clutching her prayer beads like they had a fast-track pass to heaven. Spoiler, they didn't. The prosecutor was a guy named Ronald Harris, the type who probably practiced his smug face in the mirror every morning. He started with a speech so smooth you'd think he was running for office. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, pacing the floor, "this is not just about one man. This is about keeping our community safe." The way he said community made it pretty clear he wasn't talking about people who looked like me. I sat there, hands sweating, as they paraded evidence in front of the jury. First up, the gun. The same beat-up revolver Carter found in the alley. It was wrapped in plastic like some holy relic. Harris held it up like he'd just solved world peace. "This was recovered mere feet from the defendant," he announced, his voice dripping with drama. "And it matches the description of the weapon used in the robbery." My lawyer, Mr. Stevenson, tried to argue that the gun had no fingerprints and no connection to me. But let's be real, it didn't matter. To that jury, I wasn't Marcus Jameson, the auto mechanic who loved basketball and grilled ribs on weekends. I was a stereotype, another black kid in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Carter? He made sure to sell that story like he was getting commission, the testimony that sealed the deal. Then came the witnesses. First was some old lady, Mrs. Caldwell, who claimed she saw me running from the scene. She squinted at me like I was a bug under a magnifying glass. "Yes, that's him," she said, pointing at me with her shaky finger. "I'll never forget those eyes." Lady, I thought, I don't even know where this crime happened. But Harris pounced on her words like a dog on a bone. He painted me as a menace, someone who'd terrorized a peaceful neighborhood. Peaceful for who exactly? And then, as if things couldn't get worse, Carter took the stand. He wore his uniform like it was armor, sitting straight-backed and oozing authority. "I observed the defendant acting suspiciously," he said, his voice calm, calculated. "When I approached him, he became aggressive, and I found this firearm nearby." Aggressive? Dude, I was too scared to even blink hard. But Carter, he could have sold sand in a desert. The jury hung on his every word, nodding along like they were at a church sermon. The verdict. When the jury filed back in, the room felt like it was shrinking. My stomach churned as the foreman stood up, his face unreadable. "We find the defendant guilty." Guilty. That word slammed into me like a freight train. My mom let out this heartbreaking cry, the kind that sticks with you forever. I wanted to scream, to yell that they got it wrong, but what was the point? The system wasn't built to hear me. The judge droned on about my sentence. 20 years. 20 years for something I didn't do. My legs felt like jelly as the bailiff led me away. I caught a glimpse of Carter in the back of the room, smirking like he'd just won the lottery. I wanted to burn that image out of my brain, but it's still there, clear as day. Welcome to Hell prison isn't like the movies. It's worse. The walls reek of bleach and despair, and the noise never stops. Doors slamming, people yelling, guards barking orders. It's a constant reminder that you're not free. My first day was a crash course in survival. Some guy twice my size cornered me in the yard, grinning like he'd just found his next meal. "New meat," he said, cracking his knuckles. I don't know what came over me, but I swung first. Bad idea. He laid me out flat, and the guards didn't even blink. Over time, I learned the rules. Don't trust anyone, don't show weakness, and definitely don't talk back to the guards. They had their own version of justice, and it usually involved the baton. Letters from the outside. The only thing that kept me sane was my family. My mom wrote me every week, her letters filled with prayers and promises that we'd find a way to prove my innocence. My little brother Michael sent me sketches of cars we used to work on together. He was growing up without me, and it hurt like hell. But as the years dragged on, hope started to feel like a cruel joke. Appeals went nowhere. Evidence disappeared. And Carter, he was living his best life, climbing the ranks while I rotted in a cell. Still, I held on. Not because I thought the system would suddenly grow a conscience, but because I refused to give Carter the satisfaction of breaking me. If he wanted me to disappear, he'd have to do a hell of a lot better than this. The fire starts to burn one night. As I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't just sit here and wait for justice to find me. If I was ever getting out, I'd have to fight for it myself. I didn't know how yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't done. And somewhere out there, Carter was going to pay. Fast forward 18 years. Yeah, 18. By this point, prison wasn't just a sentence, it was a routine. But something shifted. Out in the real world, people were starting to call bullshit on the justice system, and my little brother Michael, he wasn't letting my name get buried. Michael had grown up into a tech-savvy pit bull with a grudge. He started posting my story online, laying it out for the world to see. "My brother's been rotting in prison for a crime he didn't commit," he wrote, adding every shady detail about Officer Carter. It blew up fast. People were pissed, and honestly, watching that unfold from behind bars was the first time in years I felt a spark of hope. Enter Lauren Wilson, a journalist with a knack for digging where no one wants her to. She reached out to Michael, got the full story, and then started tearing into the case like it owed her money. She found the cracks Carter tried so hard to seal. No fingerprints on the gun, no solid witness IDs. And the biggest bombshell? Footage from a gas station camera proving I wasn't even near the scene of the crime. The dirty truth. Lauren didn't stop there. She tracked down an ex-cop who worked under Carter back in the day. Turns out this guy had been sitting on a secret for years. Carter was dirty as hell. The ex-cop had recordings, actual recordings, of Carter planning to pin the robbery on me. "Gotta keep the neighborhood safe," Carter had said. Translation: let's frame the black kid because it's easy. Lauren handed everything over to a lawyer who specialized in wrongful convictions. They filed a petition to reopen my case, and for the first time in almost 2 decades, the system had no choice but to take a second look. The fight begins. When I got the news, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or punch a wall. All I knew was this: Carter's little house of cards was about to come crashing down. Courtrooms hit different when you've got hope on your side. Sitting there after 20 years of being silenced, I finally felt like the tide was turning. Lauren's evidence was rock solid, and Carter? Oh, he looked like he'd swallowed a cactus. The prosecution presented everything: the gas station footage, the lack of fingerprints, and, of course, those damning audio recordings. When the judge played Carter's voice saying, "Pin it on the kid," the whole room went dead silent. It was the kind of silence that screams guilty as hell. Carter tried to deny it, of course. "I was under pressure," he stammered, sweating bullets. But nobody was buying it. Not the jury, not the judge, not even his own lawyer, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The verdict. When the judge finally spoke, it felt like time stopped. "Marcus Jameson, you are exonerated of all charges." Those words hit me like a tidal wave. My mom cried so loud I thought she'd get kicked out. Michael hugged me like he wasn't going to let go. And for the first time in 2 decades, I walked out of that courtroom a free man. The aftermath. Carter wasn't so lucky. He got slapped with charges for corruption and perjury, and watching him get dragged out of the courtroom in cuffs? Chef's kiss. But this wasn't just about him. It was about everyone else like me, stuck in a system designed to bury us. Now I'm out here using my story to fight back. Speaking out, working with lawyers, doing everything I can to make sure no one else has to lose 20 years of their life because someone like Carter decided to play God. Justice is a funny thing. It's slow, it's messy, but when it finally shows up, damn, it's worth the wait.